My name is Renee Targus. I'm the editor of Agribusiness Global, and I'm your MC for today. We've got actually 4 presenters, and they got really good information to share with you today, so I'm glad you're here. We're having 2 speakers that are going back to back for this half-hour session, covering regulations in Southeast Asia and regulations in Latin America. We have Dr. Pietra Pucle. She's from Knoll. She's also an Agribusiness Global board member, and she contributes quite a bit to our publication. So, and then we also have Alexander Quesada. He's from Smart, and he will be presenting right after her, covering Latin America. So, would you like to come up?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trung, and I represent Cano. My roles involve overseeing regulatory policy and product registration in Asia region, focusing on crop protection and crop nutrition. I'm happy to join you today. Just a brief introduction about Cano and who we are. Cano is a service provider for regulatory science for over 25 years, and we are specialized in various regulatory areas, including crop protection and crop nutrition. And our global services are facilitated through our own companies with over 650 employees across multiple locations. Now let me bring you to the topic of navigating pesticides, regulatory landscapes insights from Southeast Asia. Today we will focus on pesticide registration regulation in Thailand, the Philippines, and Vietnam. And if you're interested in other Southeast Asia countries, of course, we can discuss those later. This table summarizes the regulatory difference across various Asian countries. Pay attention to diversity in rules. As you can see, there's a lack of harmonization system for registering pesticides and related products in this region. To start the registration process, first, you should check the status of the products you are interested in registering. And this includes knowing the product category and having information on the formulation and concentration, as well as the usage and claims. And once you have this information, it is important to have a pre-registration meeting to understand how you can register the product and also the action required process. Another important point to consider are the qualifications of the applicant and registration license holder, as well as whether that product needs to be registered or can be registered in your target country or not. And from there, you need to create and review the application form and confirm that the dossier is accurate and complete before submission. The registration committee will then conduct a technical and scientific evaluation. And in order to proceed, efficacy trials must be conducted locally. And this is important to note that each country that has its own set of guidelines and requirements that must be followed during these trials. Now let's look at the registration regulation and what you should know if you want to register your product in Thailand. First, only the Thai entity can be a registration license holder. Submission must be done via the online system, so-called the National Single Window or NSW. And the local trials are mandatory requirements for registration. And in Thailand, you can select either conduct the efficacy trials in one location in 2 seasons or 2 locations in 1 season. And the overall time frame for registration takes approximately about 2 to 2.5 years, including local efficacy trials. And the registration license is valid for 6 years. To start the registration, a company needs to have an NSW account available to individuals or local entities. Foreign manufacturers can appoint Thai importer or local agent for the product registration. Pesticide registration requires compliance with approved concentrations and formulations listed on the DOA website, with exemption for some specific products like plant growth regulators, pheromones, and biopesticides. If this need information is missing, companies can request its addition. And there is no formal process exists for submitting confidential business information. So you can use the local agent because if you appoint local agents means importer won't see data during the submission, but they may access it later because they own the registration license. But typically, the DOA officer will not disclose those submit data. But of course, registration license holder can still access it if they really request to authority. So confidentiality is crucial. And in Thailand, there are 3 steps of registration, but you may say that there will be just 2 steps, which are called phase 1 and phase 3 registration. Phase 1 registration is an initial stage involve obtaining trade name approval and also submitting registration dossier with acute tox data via the NSW account. Also submitting the efficacy protocol and securing sample import permit and local efficacy trials are conducted upon approval from the DOA inspectors and phase 3 registration. Most of the technical data is submitted during phase 1. After DOA inspections and approval of efficacy trials, the applicant submit the efficacy report and complete the phase 3 registration. So in Thailand, the registration journey begins with create a trade name approval. And after receiving approval of the trade name, then the applicant shall submit phase 1 registration dossier along with the bioefficacy protocol and submit the sample import permit. And after obtaining import permit, then they shall submit the sample to DOA for analysis and start local efficacy trials. The DOA inspectors will visit and approve the trial site, and following approval, submit the full registration dossier, analysis result, and approve local efficacy data to the NSW for phase 3 registration. And for this process, it will take about 1 year for evaluation. And after the review, prepare and submit label artwork to the authority, and the final stage involves a subcommittee evaluating the submission and issuing the registration certificates. Let's shift our focus to the regulatory landscape of our second country of today, which is the Philippines. In this country, the pesticide registration is regulated by the authority called the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority, or the FPA, and the main regulation is the Presidential Decree number 1144. Philippines published the pesticide regulatory policies and implementing guidelines, so-called the Green Book. It is available in English, and if you want to check the details of the registration process and data requirements, you can easily get the Green Book from the FPA website. In Philippines, only local entity can be a registration license holder, similar to Thailand, and the registration license is valid for 3 years. There are 2 types of registration grant, which are conditional and full registration. A conditional registration may be converted into a full registration within 1 year, when the conditions and requirements have been met satisfactorily. And for product intent for registration, it is mandatory to conduct efficacy testing under the local conditions. And the gateway to conducting field trial is an experimental use permit, or EUP. And in Philippines, there are 4 types of EUPs, and each tailored for specific testing scenarios. And our spotlight today is EUP2. The bioefficacy and residual data generated during the EUP2 testing may be utilized for the registration purpose. All EUP trials should be conducted by the FPA accredited researchers following the approved protocol. And if you want to check a list of the FPA accredited researchers, is also available from the FPA website. Local companies licensed by the FPA and registered with the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is the registered company certificate in Philippines. They can start the pesticide registration process by scheduling a face-to-face appointment with the pesticide registration division of the FPA, and then initiating the EUP application online. and next submit the hard copy of the EUP application to the authority and pay the government fee, and the results from the EUP trials are used for registration. The third country is Vietnam. The main regulation is the circular number 21 of 2015, and the main regulatory framework was established by the Plant Protection Department, or the PPD. A registration license holder is restricted to local entities encompassing local manufacturers, local importers, or representative office or branches of foreign companies with business license, specifically for pesticide product operations in Vietnam. For this country, the overall time frame for registration spans 2 to 3 years, and data requirements for pesticides are available, but it is in Vietnamese language. For this country, there are two types of pesticide registration: the supplementary registration and full registration. The supplementary registration covers modifications to existing pesticides, such as change in use, dosage, application methods, and formulation types. It also includes pesticide with list active ingredients but different trade names, allowing updates and flexibility within the regulatory framework. And another type is the full registrations, which involve pesticides with unlisted active ingredients, new compositions that have been registered abroad, or domestically originated pesticide proposed by the scientific councils. The registration process in Vietnam begins with the preparation of the application, securing a permit for field trials, and obtain sample import permit. Field trials must be conducted on both of the small and large scales in both northern and southern Vietnam. And after completing trials, submit the comprehensive dossiers and draft product label for evaluation by the registration committee, and approval is issued based on this assessment. So until now, we go through the pesticide registration regulations of 3 key Southeast Asia countries. Now let's have a look at the top 3 things you need to know if you want to register the product in this region. I would like to introduce you to the 3L concept: local entity requirement, local efficacy trials, as well as language and regulatory complexity. Firstly, regarding the local entity requirements, in many Southeast Asia countries, pesticide registration necessitates a local entities as the registration holder. This requires companies to either partner with a local firm or establish their own subsidiary in each country. And local entity must be a registered company authorized to handle pesticide operations. Secondly, local efficacy trials. Southeast Asia countries typically mandate local efficacy trials to demonstrate under the local conditions. Understanding regulation is crucial for designing trials protocol correctly, especially given varying requirements based on whether the target crop is the major crops or non-major crops in that country, impacting the number and type of trials required. And lastly, consider language and regulatory complexity. Navigating these diverse regulations can be complex, compounded by language barriers that require translation and local expertise for compliance. And what else should we know? Before registration, ensure that your pesticide meets formulation and concentrations, as well as the active ingredient requirements. Depending on the country, for some country you may need detail on storage facilities and pesticide operator certificates before apply for the registrations. Local bioefficacy trials conducted by CROs, accredited institutes, or government agencies assess effectiveness in local conditions. Collaborating with local experts and budgeting effectively are crucial for compliance with evolving regulations. Pesticide registration in this region involves a varied and complex process across country. Key points to note include the regulatory variations. Each country has its own framework, leading to varying requirements, process, and timeline. Understanding this is very essential before proceeding with the product registration. And some potential market opportunities for pesticide in these regions are development of new active ingredients and new formulation to enhance pest control efficacy. Rising demands for bioproducts like biopesticides and biostimulants. Adoption of agricultural drones for precise pesticide application and investment in climate smart agricultural technologies for sustainable and resilient farming. And with that, that's all about my presentation. And if you need any support or want to discuss about legislation in this region, just feel free to let me know. Thank you.